What's up, my peeps, homeboys, homegirls, cheese balls? So anyway, I know I've been gone for a minute, but I'm about to start doing videos again. I got a whole bunch more good stories for you guys still, prison stories, and this is probably the longest you guys will ever see my hair. I need a trim. About to get ready to buzz it all off again, or maybe I'll do a little fade or something. I haven't done that in a while. But anyway, so real quick, don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And don't forget to comment. I like to interact with you guys. And then Cash App link will be in the comments. So I'm gonna get right to it. So this is another story from CCA, Corrections Corporation of America. It's a private prison. They changed the name now to something else, but it don't matter. It's still the same crooked ass private prison, you know. But anyways, this story was in 1200 unit, and the two inmates I'm gonna be talking about. I talked about them briefly in another video in a series, the short series that I did called Unlucky COs. And I mentioned in that video that I was going to go more in depth about these two individuals because they were the main two instigators in a situation where them and like I think maybe like four or five other inmates from most of them were from one certain California gang, but a couple of them were from other gangs. They assaulted a lieutenant and two COs. They jumped him in the captain's office, and they chose to do it on a Sunday, which they planned it out because Sundays is our least amount of staff, so they knew there wouldn't be hardly any COs to respond to it, right? So anyway, this story started out in 1200 unit with one gang member. I'm gonna call him Cubano. That's not his real nickname that he went by in there, but I'm trying not to be too specific. But I'm calling him that because supposedly he was Cuban, but he belonged to a California gang. He was about maybe 6 foot. Had a little bit of build on him, but not too yoked or anything. But he was a young dude, like maybe in his early 20s, I think. And I first noticed him one day because he came out to try to talk to the case manager, and there was already like 5 inmates out there. So I told him, you're going to have to go back in the pod and wait. And he right off the bat gave me attitude. So I had already recognized him, but I wasn't going to say nothing. But since he started kind of running his mouth, I said, hey, man, I know who you are, man. You're famous. And he was like, what? I said, I know who you are. I seen your ass on TV, on the news. I said, you're that dude that got arrested for pimping out that 14-year-old girl, took her across state lines. And right away he was like, I don't know why he was surprised. He should have known people were going to see him on the news or whatever, right? So, so obviously he didn't like me right off the bat because I fucking, put him on blast, And so anyway, I ended up sending his ass in. But anyway, so the other inmate that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to call him Ghost. That's not his real nickname either, but it's pretty close. He was a little bit shorter than me, kind of stocky. He looked like he worked out a lot. And he was like real white. Like he almost looked like a white dude, but he was a Chicano. That's why they call him Ghost, right? So anyway, these two were homies. They were always together, and they were both a couple of fucking idiots, just always fucking acting stupid, doing stupid shit. And so like the main thing that kind of like escalated it was one day I was a rec officer on 1200 unit, right? And so like there was like about probably 7 or 8 other other inmates out there from their same gang, right? But I was cool with them, and I was actually talking to a couple of them, and they were like higher ranking dudes, right? So anyway, Ghost and Cubano were leaning up against the rec yard fence, which is a big no-no, because for one, they could be messing with the fence, pulling fence ties off of it to try to make weapons out of it, and it's just you're not supposed to be within 3 feet of the rec fence. So I walked over to him and I was like, "Yo, man, you guys can't be leaning on the rec fence. You know that." And so, like right away, instead of just doing, just like moving along and going about their business, they're like, "Oh, you always got some fucking shit to say, Diaz. You always gotta fucking be talking shit or something." And I was like, "Man, I'm doing my job." I was like, "Don't be leaning on the rec fence, and I won't have nothing to say to you." So they kind of said some more stuff, and I was like, "Look, man, you guys can either go about your business and go work out or shoot hoops or whatever, or if you're gonna keep running your mouth, I'm gonna send your asses in." So Cubano chose to like go about his business or whatever, but Ghost, for whatever reason, still kind of kept running his mouth, right? So I told him, "All right, man, I'm gonna send your ass in." So I called the sergeant, told they have one coming in, is not complying, leaning up against the rec fence and running his mouth. So I told him start walking to the rec door, and so he's walking and he's kind of running his mouth, just kind of talking crap, like about how I always got shit to say and I don't know, like I'm always like fucking with him or whatever, right? And I'm like, "Nah, man, the thing you don't seem to understand is don't give me a fucking reason to have shit to say to you, and I won't fucking I won't bother your ass." And then he said something like, basically like, you're not gonna fucking talk to me like that or something like that. And I was like, "Whatever, dude, I just did. Fucking deal with it." You know what I'm saying? Like what? You know? And he didn't do shit. So I was like, "Yeah, that's what I thought. Keep walking, motherfucker." And then I told him, "Get on the wall." And, I fucking pat searched him, sent him in. And then I found out later from the sergeant he was trying to snitch on me, he's supposed to be some hardcore gang member, and he's, telling on me to the sergeant, saying that I was like trying to like instigate a fight with them, that I was trying to get him to jump or whatever, right? I'm like, whatever. So we had a little laugh about that. But so anyway, I was constantly butting heads with him and Cubano, right? Trying to make sure not to slip and say their real nicknames or whatever. But so I'm kind of looking at my notes, if somebody's wondering what I'm doing. But anyway, so I finally got kind of fed up with them, because I'm not gonna lie, it seemed like some of the other COs were like afraid to say anything to them. So I ended up going to one of the OGs, one of the shot callers, and tell them, "Look, I'm not trying to constantly be bumping heads with these dudes and having to get on them. So either you tell them they need to chill with all the dumb shit, so I'm not having to constantly get on them for stuff, or it's just gonna bring heat to your pot, you know." So I guess the one of the OG shot callers, like, must have told them something, because they weren't too happy about it. So I guess I actually found out later from one of the AZ inmates, one of the AZ Chicanos, told me that they wanted to get me, right? Those two gang members I'm talking about, right? I almost slipped and said they're gang. But anyway, so they had actually asked permission from one of the OG shot callers, and he just happened to be a dude that, like, me and him were cool as fuck. Like, he had been there like 2 or 3 different times. He was a repeat offender, and we were just cool. Like, we just clicked. Like, we got along really well, about as good as a CO and an inmate can get along, And so anyways, I'll go into that more later, but he obviously told them no, that it wasn't going to happen, right? So they ended up getting moved to a different unit, and I think that probably had a lot to do with it. I think that shot caller probably told them they needed to request to be moved to a different unit, just to kind of squash the situation. So they ended up being moved to 500 unit, and so when they were in 500 unit, I guess they planned out this assault, and I'm not trying to act like I was some big important, person there at the prison or anything like that. But like I said, like, I always had mad respect from the inmates because I mean I was all about respect too, you know, but also because they knew I was down, you know, like, and they knew I was gonna like take any shit from them or whatever. But so like I think obviously, you know, honestly, I think one of the reasons that they did what they did was because a lot of the other inmates wanted to get that dude Cubano because they considered him a sex offender. They considered him a child molester because he was pimping out a 14-year-old girl. She's a minor. So in their opinions, and I agreed with them, he was basically you know, a sex offender. You know, a chomo, is, you know, like the inmates call it, right? So a lot of inmates wanted to get him, like inmates from other gangs, and then, you know, just regular inmates that weren't in gangs. They wanted to get him, but for whatever reason, his gang protected him. You know, they said no, it's different or whatever. Like for some reason, they gave him an exception. I don't know if it's because he was a pimp or whatever, but so in my opinion, the reason that they did that assault in 500 unit was because he wanted to get locked up. He wanted to get locked up in segregation because it's almost the same thing as being put in protective custody, but except you're doing it in a way that instead of like becoming a PC, which is like the ultimate big no-no for a convict inmate, because once you go into protective custody, there's no coming out of there. There's no redeeming yourself from that. You'll be a PC for the rest of the time that you're in any kind of prison or jail, right? Um, the only way to actually get locked up, and it's the total opposite of being PC, and you get all kinds of clout and all kinds of, like, you know, respect from the other convicts and inmates, is to assault staff. So in my opinion, that's why they did that. And in my opinion, it was all Cubano. It was his idea to do that because he wanted to get that max custody status, so he would never hit GP. So he would never have to worry about people coming after him. Because, my opinion, when he was gonna get to the federal prison, which that's where he was headed to, somebody was gonna get his ass, because, you know, his gang was gonna be around to protect him all the time. And obviously, a lot of the other prisoners and inmates considered him a sex offender, child molester. So that's my opinion, that he had that shit planned out so he could get locked up for his own protection. But anyway, so that assault happened, and you know, they fucked up a lieutenant and two COs, and then you know, I was, like I said in the previous video, I was pretty pissed about it because I was in 1000 control when that happened, so I couldn't even respond to it. And then, you know, I knew they did it on purpose on that day because there wasn't hardly any COs to respond to it. But anyway, so like, it was maybe like a couple of weeks later, I went down to the segregation pod where those two guys were being held, Ghost and Cubano, right? And I think I was like dropping off another inmate. I was helping escort another inmate or something. And then I don't remember if somebody had told me or how I heard, but I remembered that they were in that pod supposedly. It was pretty sure it was a 900 uniform pod. And then so I asked the pod officer, "Can I see your roster?" You know, and so I looked to see what cells they were in, and they were both on the top tier, like maybe about 4 or 5 cells away from each other. So I walked up there, and I went to Ghost first, to his cell, and he was kind of like pacing around in the cell, and when he seen me in the window, he wouldn't even look at me. I put that on everything. And his cellie was another member of his gang that I was familiar with, kind of an older dude, like maybe in his 30s, and we were cool, like we had mutual respect or whatever, right? And I remember looking in there, and I told him, that's some fucking bitch ass punk bullshit. You and fucking Cubano pulled down, beating up on a fucking old ass man. Because one of the COs was like old. I'm talking about like maybe like in his 60s or something, right? And then the lieutenant, he was kind of older too. And then the one CO was the only young dude. He was like in his 20s. But I told him that was some punk ass fucking bullshit you motherfuckers pulled, man. I told him I used to punk your ass on it, or not. I'll take that back. I didn't punk him, but well, actually, I did kind of punk him on the rec yard. But I told him I used to check you and fucking Cubano on a daily in fucking in GP and 1200 unit. And actually, I did tell him that. I told him I punked your ass on the fucking rec yard in front of your homies, and you didn't do shit. And he wouldn't even look at me. And it was funny because I put this on everything. His celly was just kind of looking at me, just kind of smiling, going like that. He didn't say nothing, right? Because he knew I was speaking truth. I was speaking facts. So I just left his ass and I walked down the tier to go talk to Cubano, right? And he was already at the front of his cell. When I came walking up, he punched his window, right, like some tough guy. And he's like, fuck you, Diaz. He's like, you're lucky I can't get out this door. I'll come out there and fuck you up. And I just laughed and said, man, shut the fuck up, dude. I said, I fucking checked your ass on the daily too in 1200. You never did shit. You didn't never fucking step to me. You'd rather beat the shit out of a fucking old ass man and two other COs with about 7 dudes behind you. That's the kind of punk ass fucking bitch you are. I told him too. I said, ain't nothing but a fucking PC move, and you know that shit because you ain't nothing but a fucking chomo, fucking pimping out a 14-year-old girl. I said, wait till you get to the fucking federal prison. They're gonna get your ass. And he punched the window again. He's like, fuck you, Diaz. He was mad, right? Because he knew I was speaking facts too. And his cellie didn't say shit to me. He just let it ride or whatever, right? So I walked away, and when I got downstairs, the pod officer, I don't remember who it was, but he was like, damn, Diaz. He's like, that's fucking dope, bro. Like, the way he told both of them, he's like, you fucking laid it out, you know? And so, you know, I gave him a little fist bump or whatever, you know? So I went out of the pod, and I didn't ever see Cubano again after that. I think he got moved to a different facility or something. But Ghost, he might have left and then came back, but I know I seen him again, like, actually a couple times in one of the segregation pods in 900 unit, but a different pod, like maybe Sierra pod. And every time I seen him, he would always start talking shit, running his mouth, you know, fuck you, Diaz, this and that, you know. So he found his voice, you know what I'm saying? Like, he started talking shit back to me. So, like, there was this shot caller there at CCA. I'm obviously not going to say the name, you know, the name of the gang he was in, but everybody knows that it's the biggest one. It's the one that runs everything. And he was our highest ranking shot caller we had there at the prison. And his nickname was LB. I'll say his nickname because we were cool. Like, I mean, we had mad respect, mutual respect, right? So, because like the first time I had, you know, talked to him, like, you know, the first time I had worked his pod, he was in new seg, max custody. You know, we just basically like chopped it up, you know, for a long time, and I just let him know right from the beginning, like, hey, you know, we can chop it up, we can talk all you want, but just please don't ever try to include me in your politics, and don't ever ask me to like run any errands for you or anything like that. You know, basically just, you know, keep me out of the mix, out of your politics or whatever. And he just kind of looked at me like that and be like, all right, Diaz, don't start none, it won't be none, you know? And then, but we were cool after that, right? We just used to always talk, you know? But anyway, I ended up seeing that shot caller, like, I don't know, maybe like a couple of weeks after the last time, or about a week after the last time I had a run-in with Ghost, right? And he called me over to his cell. Hold on. So he called me over to his cell and he's like, hey, Diaz, he's like, let me talk to you for a minute, you know? And I was like, all right, what's up, man? And he goes, hey, so Little Bird told me, he goes, you're having trouble with one of my peeps, man, a youngster named Ghost. And I was like, yeah, I was like, how'd you know? He's like, come on, man, that's one of my peeps. I know everything, you know? I was like, yeah, I know. And so he told me like this, he goes, do me a favor. He goes, you don't owe me anything. He goes, just do me a favor. He goes, the next time you see Ghost, he said, tell him from me, he said, tell him LB said whatever beef he has with you, he needs to squash that shit. And I was like, all right, cool, man. I was like, gracias, And he just like was like that, And so like maybe about a week later, or probably not even a week later, like maybe about a couple days later, I ended up going to Casper's pod for whatever reason. And actually, I think I was working that pod on that night. And I was walking down the tier, and he was already standing at the front of the cell, looking out the window, like had a stupid look on his face, like he was about to start talking shit, right? So I walk up to his cell and I said, hey, Ghost. I said, I was talking to LB, and he wanted me to deliver a message for you, to you. And then he was like, what? He's like, you were talking to LB? I said, yeah. I said, whatever beef you had between me and you, he said, you need to squash that shit. And I'm not lying, his eyes like got big right away, right? And he started stuttering, no joke. He's like, fucking, he's like, LB said that? I said, yeah. He said, squash it. He's like, okay, sir. He's like, okay, Mr. Diaz. He's like, you won't ever have any problems for me again. And no joke, every time I ever seen him after that or dealt with him in any way, it was always, how you doing, Officer Diaz? Or, yes, sir, no, sir, Like, nothing but respect. I was like, damn. I just tripped out on how much fear it put in him when I told him that, right? And LB he wasn't like a real big dude or anything. He was kind of a smaller dude, but he just had the reputation of, number one, obviously he was a shot caller. And you don't get to that position without being a bad motherfucker. And he had the reputation of just, he could throw them hands. Like he was a badass dude because like he was feared by all the other inmates, So yeah, it was a trip, right? But the last part of this was like I was walking down the hall one day, and I was passing 600 unit on my way back to 1200 unit, and I seen this young Chicano inmate that used to be in 1200 unit, and I won't say his real nickname, but well, I'll just call him Dreamer. So, and he was a small dude, right? But he was known for being a little scrapper, like a tough guy too, right? But kind of reminded me of like if you've ever seen that old ass movie, what's it called? It's like an old gang movie. There was an actor on there named Pony Boy, kind of looked like him. The Outsiders, that's what it was called. But anyway, he's like, Diaz. He's like, what's up? He's like, let me talk to you real quick. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And he goes, hey, he goes, you weren't involved in that thing in 500 unit that when they assaulted the lieutenant and MCOs in the campus office? I was like, no, man. And he goes, I didn't think so. He goes, but the reason I'm asking is because, and he was like looking around to make sure no other inmates were listening. He goes, that shit was supposed to be for you, man. I was like, what? And I ain't gonna lie, I got fucking chills, And he goes, don't tell nobody I told you this. He goes, because I'll catch a beat and I'll be in big trouble or whatever, right? He goes, but yeah, he goes, they wanted to get you. He goes, well, you already probably knew that, but he goes, they had asked the shot caller in our unit, and he said no because basically said because Diaz is all about respect. He talks to everybody, treats everybody the same, and he don't trip on the little shit or nothing like that. So I guess that shot caller had told them, if you guys want to get Diaz, if either one of you wants to get Diaz, it has to be one-on-one, no weapons. You step to him straight up and box him, And this was Dreamer's words. He goes, obviously neither one of them stepped to you, so he goes, the motherfuckers were scared. He said they didn't want none Diaz. So I was like, hey man, that's what's up, man. I said I appreciate you letting me know that, but man, that shit gave me some chills, man. And yeah, it was just a trip. It was one of those moments where, I just realized like, hey, I'm glad I always was the way I was. Like, I wasn't perfect. There was times when I lost my temper and probably said shit to inmates and probably other staff too that I shouldn't have. I'm kind of an aggressive dude. That's just my nature. But I always try to be, respectful. And that was one situation where just me being me, like being a very respectful, and try to be professional as much as I could, probably saved me from. Because if they would have gave them permission to fuck me up like how they wanted to, like they wanted to jump me and maybe use weapons too. I don't know. I mean, I might have got some good hits on them, but yeah, they would have probably fucked me up like bad. So just me being a respectful dude and being professional, kind of saved my ass. So anyway, that's another story for you guys. I hope you guys liked it. And I'll be coming out with some more videos soon. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to subscribe. And for now, that's it. Your homie Big Cisco. Peace.